Welcome to the latest episode of Let's Know Buffalo, where we are roaming and bringing on the best entrepreneurs, executives, business people, anybody that's interesting in the business world community of Western New York.
You did there, roaming like a buffalo.
Roaming Buffalo.
I
It's
got
going to change every single time.
Okay.
I'm Kevin McMullen here with Joe Sorrentino. Why don't you introduce our next guest, as you know him so well?
Yeah, well, thank you for being here. We got Anthony Butera, who is, I'm going to mess this up a little bit, but Anthony's a broker owner of the Keller Williams franchise out of the greater Rochester area. He's also my broker and the broker owner at Keller Williams, Western New York, and Lancaster, but also the owner and the founder of the Anthony Butera Team, who is one of the top teams in Rochester with thousands of sales under their belt and regularly producing 400 to 600 sales per year.
Very impressive.
So thanks for being here, babe.
Of course.
So you got to hit us up with some knowledge,
Okay.
right? But why don't you start, just kind of give us a little background and, you know, your introduction of Western New York and where you live.
Yeah, so I live in Rochester. Well, I tell everybody, now these days, I live in Buffalo, I sleep in Rochester, right? As Joe said, I'm a broker and owner in Rochester with Keller Williams. I have a business partner, Chuck Hilbert, as well, and Chuck's my business partner out here. I purchased the Buffalo Keller Williams franchises just over 2 years now, and it's been a really cool journey. I like to tell people that the side of Rochester I grew up on, which is the west side, which is a really working class side of Rochester.
Because there's a lot of money in Rochester, too.
Oh my God,
right? Yeah,
I didn't.
a lot of people don't know that.
It's much more affluent than Buffalo, right? But not the side of the tracks that I grew up on. And I've gained such an appreciation for the personalities in Buffalo because for me it was an easier transition. Like-minded people, grew up working class,
Right.
So there was a ton of similarities, and they're the relationships that I enjoy the most as well. So yeah, it's been.
I always say that in living and growing up in Western New York, right, the people are just incredible. And that's what keeps me here a lot. Like, 1 degree of separation, just nice, quality people, right?
And I don't feel the cliques, right? We have a large real estate pool in Rochester, and I feel like there's groups that kind of hang out with each other, not so much with everybody. But in Buffalo, it's like everybody from every walk of life.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
Like, just the differences. Let's just call it an hour away,
Yeah,
right?
yep.
Like, I mean, you can even do that with Toronto, right? Like, you can look across and see Toronto, and it's different money, different culture, different country. It's so
close,
different.
yeah.
But so close.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I remember you telling me once one of the differences with the two cities is like in Buffalo, let's say there's, I'm in Williamsville, if there's a really nice restaurant in Black Rock, I'm going to go there to eat. Right. And everyone will come for everyone to do that. And you said Rochester's not necessarily like that.
Correct. Yeah. There's a general area, and it's on the east side of Rochester, right? So West Siders will travel to the east side to go out, have dinner, have drinks. East Siders will never cross the tracks to go on to the west side, and it's just it's crazy.
It's so interesting to hear that.
Yeah,
right?
and the other vast difference is, you guys are a throughway city. In Rochester, we don't go on the throughway unless we're going on vacation.
Okay.
Right.
Really?
So, yeah, because we're not near. I mean, depending where you are, you're nowhere in Rochester's within. Unless you're hugging the outskirts, but like the city of Rochester, you're 30 plus minutes to get to the throughway.
Wow.
Whoa.
Yeah. Right. So once I'm on the throughway coming in every day, honestly, it's 35 minutes. It's getting to the throughway.
Wow.
Right. So when I came here and people were like, "Hey, I know you're on transit." And you got to go to transit. You're going to want to take the throughway. I'm going, are they drunk? What you realize what you just said? And now I get it.
Right.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
how did you get into real estate?
Yeah.
I guess what was your kind of path? Maybe you don't have to go back to a child, but like
Very unconventional.
Okay.
C- student. College was
like a
not
theme
even
around here lately.
college
yeah.
was not even an option for me. Got right into construction. I was a union sheet metal worker. I was a tin knocker. I used to fabricate metal, welds, install, all commercial application. And when you're 17 years old, I just graduated high school, and someone says, if you get into this union after your 5-year apprenticeship, you can make $50,000 one day. You're going, whoa, 50,000.
I hung drywall straight out of high school.
Yeah.
And it was like same thing, right? Like
Yep.
was construction the most money I could make without an education. I jumped right into it and busted my balls for 12 hours a day.
Yeah. And then when they tell you that there's a pension and annuity and health insurance, it's like, okay, well, this is the safe bet. This is what I should do.
Right.
And without that college degree, right, I felt like there was no other options.
Right.
So I worked in that. I mean, just 12 years ago, I was still swinging the hammer, right? So yeah, the journey's been kind of crazy. And I remember the last few years, the commercial work picture in Rochester was almost obsolete, right? So we had a union membership of like 420 members, and I remember there was never more than like 150 working at a time.
Right.
And then you'd kind of have to rotate. No matter how qualified you are, talented, you kind of have to rotate
I'd have
opportunities.
to imagine the percentage of people that get out of a field like that and just take a 90-degree turn and do something completely different.
You know, it was interesting. So I came from that world where the work was so limited that all of us were fighting to work hours. And then I get into real estate, and like I took it so literal when someone said, well, you can work as much as you want and make as much as you want. Right. And right. And I'm 30 years old, and now what I wanted to make changed than what I thought I wanted to make.
Right.
Reality came in. And so I literally Googled uncapped income, no college degree. There was a link to get your 75-hour pre-licensing.
Come on.
Click the link.
That's amazing.
Click the link.
I wonder who was responsible for that SEO.
Yeah, I know. Signed up to take the online course.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and in Rochester, everyone takes the course online. We don't have a wonderful Cusack Center
Tom
like
Cusack.
Buffalo has.
Shout out to Tom
Everybody
Cusack.
goes to the legend, right? So I clicked on that, and then Google said, if you're thinking of getting into real estate, save enough money to live for 6 months. So I did that, and Google didn't fail me yet. And next thing you know, I get licensed. Everyone told me not to. My brothers, my parents, my close friends thought I was crazy for doing it. Never sold a thing in my life.
Did you own property at that point?
Didn't own anything. I was struggling to own the home that I owned at that time.
Holy shit.
Yeah. So I get licensed, and I was exclusively motivated by fear of failure, right? And fear can be a hell of a motivator. There's top leaders in the world, business leaders in the world that are still motivated by fear. Right. And my first couple years, I worked, especially my first year, I was possessed. I was turning the lights on at the brokerage I was at and turning the lights off. I was there from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. most nights, and I felt like as long as I was there, I was working, I was doing something.
Sure.
And I had no budget. Like today, everyone's like, well, what's your lead gen budget? What's your marketing budget? Right. I had no budget, right? So I had to focus on things that didn't cost a thing. I was literally
just grassroots, right? Like you're just grinding.
I laminated a script that I found online. Again, Google helped me again. Found a script, laminated it, and I called the white pages. I grew up in a big town, over 100,000 people, and there was the same script. Hey, Mr. Sorrentino, my name's Anthony Butera. I'm a real estate agent with so-and-so Realty. Hey, listen, I'm working with a lot of buyers right now. Your neighborhood specifically seems to be a hot one. I know you're not interested in selling your home. Didn't know if you knew any neighbors that were looking to sell their home in the next 3 to 18 months. Not selling you, but if you happen to know. And I got to tell you, when I started doing it, I would pace and at least waste an hour a day to start making the calls because I dreaded it. Yeah. And it's still the biggest gap in every real estate agent's career.
Sure.
And then something clicked. I started making calls. I was plowing through it, and I started tracking. I was checking names in the white pages, and then I'd see how many calls I would make until somebody provided me with a lead that turned into a piece of business. And then it was like, wait a second. I sound more confident in my calls. 1 out of every 150 calls that I'm making is turning into a piece of business. So when they hang up on me, instead of me getting offended, I had to start listening to a cash register, say, okay, well, my average commission is this. I'm converting 1 out of every 150. I just got paid $20 for them to hang up the phone on me, right? And so you talk about a mindset shift, right? Coming from construction, going to real estate, scarcity mindset, making those phone calls, anxiety riddled, thinking about having to go and make those phone calls, chugging 3 cups of coffee before I started making those phone calls, to wait a second, you're telling me I can make $20 a call? Click, thank you. Click, thank you. Right?
Wow.
And I would assume, and I don't mean to interrupt, but getting over that fear, and once you can get past that, the adrenaline rush of the grind and just the conquer of getting that.
I was speeding to the office. I was turning the coffee machine on. I started my calls before the pot of coffee was done being made because I couldn't wait to start plowing to my calls because now that was the conduit to make the kind of money I heard about. Remember what Google told me, right? And and that was that was the path.
And at that
You're
time,
hyping me up just talking about it.
Yeah.
You know, like,
I still don't want to make phone calls. But at that time,
the worst. I'll tell you.
Did you have anyone coaching you? Did you have a broker? Like you were
I
just
joined a team right out the gate. So I joined a real estate team and wouldn't change the experience. The team was really in its infancy at that time. There was a ton of an organization and, you know, I started prospecting. My sphere started surfacing and I was told, hey, any listings, you got to just pass it right off. I've got it from here. Take your 25% referral fee and you focus on buyers. Well, what was happening was the reason people were using me was because they knew the care that they were going to receive by working with me. They weren't receiving that same care. So I started turning to customer service for the team Rainmaker that I was affiliated with. And in less than a year, I knew that, you know what, in order for these people to continue to support me and my business, I had to go out on my own. And my mindset then was because I was splitting mostly everything 50-50 at that time. And I was like, wait a second, could I do half as much business on my own? Yeah. Could I make the same money if I did so? Yeah. So it's, and don't get me wrong, if it was a highly functioning team, I might still be on that team today, right? Because it wasn't about like people get caught up on splits, but you know, in money, and I always say, in the absence of value, money's always the conversation. No one focuses on the net; they focus on, well, wait a second, why are you getting half? Well, what if I told you you could do 3 times as much business with less DNA of you doing it all on your own, and you could stay on the front lines, and I could provide the value to make you successful? Again, just a shift in mindset. You know,
But what's crazy to me is I know the number. In your first year from doing that, how many sales did you have in your first year?
57 houses my first year.
That's fucking crazy.
And 35 of them, I think, was the second part of the first year. Because you just get in real estate today. If you performed a miracle and sold a house your first day, you're 2.5, 3 months before you get paid on it.
I just can't stress that enough. I grew up in this business. I have been doing this for 17 years. One of the top agents statistically in Western New York. Last year was my highest sales volume, and I did 53 sales that year. In your first year, you did 57. That is so crazy.
Yeah, that's impressive.
In my market, in my neighborhoods where I grew up, right, in my area where I was selling, my first year, I think my average sales price was $60,000.
Wow.
I had no choice.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
So the demographics that I was serving, and by the way, still my favorite people to serve. It's just I always enjoyed working with the average Joes. I still to this day prefer those relationships. Although my world's gotten bigger, I don't typically hang out with people whose worlds are also bigger. And I guess a lot of times, like maybe that works against me, but I enjoy the relationships that I enjoy.
That's similar with me. Obviously, I like a nice, expensive listing, but truthfully, helping a first-time home buyer, I get so much more enjoyment out of taking them through that journey, and talking to them about even their budget and their concern of spending X amount of dollars, which might not be that much, but I don't forget what that was like to be there and to be there for them to help them through that is so satisfying. So
doubt.
I totally get that.
You can make an impact, right? Where people on my path would say, hey, listen, you got to start working in the luxury market. And I got to be honest with you, I've sold plenty of luxury listings. The end of the day, I don't enjoy the process as much because the conversations sound a lot more like, hey, so we know what this is worth. What's your marketing plan? What are you going to do for us? So-and-so said they're going to do this, and so-and-so said they're going to do that, right? And they know more than you do in those conversations, as opposed to, hey, Anthony, you came highly regarded. You were highly regarded from friends of ours, and they said that we'd be foolish not to hire you. You're the professional. Do what you do. Like, you want to get up and fight for those people so much more.
I think what you said there was, and I've seen it, right, with listings, $1 million plus, you're getting highly successful individuals, a lot of type A personalities that they want to control the situation. They know more than you do. And we're speaking generically here, right? Those can be very difficult people, customers to please. And, some tough waters to navigate sometimes.
What you said about making an impact, like I've seen where some luxury agents, who regularly work in that high end, they sell someone a house that they're working with a buyer. They don't do comps for them. They have their buyer overpay so they can get paid because they don't give a shit. Years later, they go to sell. The person loses $100,000. And in that world, that's not make or break. You mentioned the word impact, like the impact of like helping someone get a good deal on their first home so that they have equity in the future to buy their second home. Like that is so much more impactful. Like I just love sinking my teeth into that shit.
And for me, coming from a W-2 employee, I was literally, I didn't move away from the $10,000 deals, the $30,000 deals, the $50,000 homes. Because you got to remember, I came from the world where all I wanted was a steady paycheck.
Right.
And the quickest thing to suffocate a business is no cash flow. So I didn't care that the checks that were coming in once a week, one of them may have been $450. I looked at it as, this is okay. I've got cash flow coming in. I've got momentum. I don't have to wait 6 months for that $15,000 commission to come in.
And that's the worst thing. I hate hearing this, and unfortunately, our industry, right? You have so many real estate agents, and sometimes, right, a sale is jammed down the throat. So agent, that salesperson, that sales professional has to put food on their table. And again, I'm very fortunate. I've got multiple businesses, all have to do with real estate. And I tell my clients all the time, I will show you 10,000 houses if that's what it takes. Because guess what? I don't need to jam a house down your throat to collect that paycheck to put food on my table. And I feel very fortunate that I'm in that position, right?
It goes back to everyone we talk to. Customer service is such an important thing, and taking care of your clients.
And you said that right in the beginning.
Yeah, it's such an important
customer
thing.
service. That is such a theme for success. When you start talking, and the first thing out of your mouth was customer service, that's the theme that we continue to hear.
Everyone successful recognizes that, and what I always, when I'm working with a buyer, I compare it to dating, and I'm like, listen, because buyers, especially now with the internet, and for the last few years, everyone's doing delayed showings. There's showings at an open house, so buyers have it in their head like, oh, I don't want to bother Joe. He's busy. I'll just go to the open house. I'll tell them, like, you're not bothering me. I want you to blow up my phone and look at 100 houses, because I compare it to dating. Like, if the first time we finally get out there and you think maybe you love the house, but you have nothing to compare it to, you don't have a lot of reference to make a good decision. You should go on a bunch of dates, meet a bunch of people, so then, a few things happen. You might realize, like, oh, I thought this person was perfect, but you know what? They kind of suck. This person's better. Or maybe the opposite. They're like, oh, this person's not good looking, not for me. I want this guy. And then they meet that guy and they're like, you know what? That other guy wasn't so bad, actually. But you only can do that if you get out there.
It's long game versus short game, right? I've made more money talking people out of homes than I ever
Yes.
did talking them into
Yes.
when you focus on the long game, right? So when I'm teaching new agents like how to show up for their clients every day, I said, listen, you want to crush 99% of the industry, go into every transaction like you're never going to earn a dollar. You're
Yes.
only going to earn your money in the future from their referrals based on the consumer experience.
Right.
Yes.
So when we focus on the experience, right? Because like, let's face it, I know this is a touchy topic right now talking about commissions, but 99.9% of the time in our local markets, let's just say upstate New York, we're getting paid the same percentage, right? So I always give the analogy, if a consumer were on Expedia because they had to go to Miami and the cost of the Four Seasons was the same as the Comfort Inn, where do you think they're gonna stay?
Right.
Well, the answer is easy. So the only thing that differentiates us is the consumer experience.
Right.
Right. So,
Yes.
and again, I love this industry. It's been so good to me. But I also feel like there's so much learning that needs to happen. I love that I'm in an industry where an agent can make hundreds of thousands of dollars because they've got a great personality and people love being around them. And I hate this industry because people can make hundreds of thousands of dollars because they have a personality and people like being around them. Because when they tell me that they want to grow their business, well, they're saying that,
Sure.
but their personality has a ceiling. So if you're good doing $6 million in volume a year because that's what your personality can support, then fine.
Right.
You're probably going to be good. The only thing that's going to change is the market, and you may fall victim to that. But if you're telling me that you want to turn your $6 million business into a $12, $50, or $100 million business, well, you need to be learning-based, and you need to be obsessed with being learning-based. Because if you're not obsessed with being learning-based, you're only obsessed with your ego. And that's where the big issue is in our industry.
Wow. That's so. Oh, that's
Yeah, I
fucking
would
good
say
shit.
that if you're not listening to this podcast and you're a new agent or maybe even an experienced agent and you're not getting the results,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Well, so for you, you went from doing something incredible right off the bat, and now, like I said, you have a huge team, and you've been out of production.
For over 2 years now, 100% out of production.
So how did you get to that point where you decided to start expanding and hiring people and truly building a team?
I think the biggest thing that holds a lot of agents back is their inability to take risks. I'm naturally a risk taker, and I'd say I'm the only big risk taker in my family. My parents are, conservative. My brothers are highly successful, but they are employees. And I don't have children. So I don't take that for granted. You're more adverse to risk when you got to go and face people at home if rolling the dice didn't work out. For me, honestly, if I lost everything today and woke up tomorrow broke, I don't know if I'd lose a minute of sleep because I found a way to enjoy the process of it. And I know that I'd wake up tomorrow even more aggressive than I am now because over time we get comfortable, right?
comfort is such a killer.
Yeah, it's
I
the
I feel it
enemy.
in my own life sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Like you start doing really well, and you get the comfort, and you don't have that motivation sometimes, and that's tough, right?
Yeah.
Especially when you work for yourself.
Sometimes you got to get kicked in the teeth to get back on the
It's
horse
happened,
again.
right?
Yeah.
You lose a little bit, or you have a down year, and it's like, oh shit. And when you can go back and look and say, well, I had a down year because guess what? I fucking slacked off last year, and I didn't put in the work, or I didn't make those phone calls. You only got one person to blame.
2021 was my last year in production. My team we sold well over 500 units that year. Made some key hires. I wanted to have the staff for a 700 unit team now, and the momentum just kept telling me we're going to grow and grow and grow, and the market was extremely fruitful. So 2022 shows up and tells us to go fuck ourselves, right? And the market shifted dramatically, and we did 100 less units with more overhead, right? And looking back, 2022 happened. It happened for me and not to me, because 2023 we went into it. We burned everything to the ground, and we started from scratch. And if you're not willing to burn everything to the ground and start over, you will face your ceiling, and you're not going to like living in that world.
That's, I think, such an important thing for people to hear too, is people think if you get into business for yourself, that, you know, anyone who's successful, like that they've never experienced failure, but like you said, you had to burn it down. You with your video game stores, like they were great, and then the industry changed, and you had to reinvent yourself, and that's just part of everyone's path of life. You have to face failure, but you just got to keep going.
Sometimes, honestly, that I look back and some of that failure was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Yeah.
Going through it, like the depression and the sleep and just wanting to work and do something and no direction. And when you own your own business and you've got bills to pay and think, you know, luckily at the time that it happened to me, I didn't have a wife and I didn't have a kid.
Yep.
I did have a mortgage, but again, the kick in the teeth that provided me. And now I look back and I went through that and I'm like, bring it on. If that happens again,
you know you can do it again.
I know I will be fine. I got through it. I have the experience. I'm older. I'm wiser. I'm stronger.
Yeah, you have a track record, and it's so funny. You know, most people root against others' success for some strange reason, and people will they'll send screenshots of like a newspaper article of somebody that we grew up with that built a big business and then went bankrupt, and they're like, ha 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 ha, and I go, listen, I will bet every penny I have that they're going to build right back up, and they're going to build better because they're going to learn from these mistakes, right? But it's pivoting from entrepreneurial to purposeful, right? I had to get more purposeful with my business. And the moment I started becoming learning-based, because remember, my track record was I was not a learning-based student, couldn't stand being in there.
Right.
But then I found something I'm passionate about. I started consuming everything that I needed to, right?
It's incredible when it's a topic or something that you enjoy, how much you want to learn about it, right?
Yep.
And that's the difference, right? Like when you go through high school and college and you're like history and math, like boring.
Yep.
But cars, real estate, something that you're interested in, right?
But
comics.
What's so fascinating is we talked about this before as well. Like people, it's embedded so much. Like you should love what you do that some people sit around and wait for that thing to happen, and almost everyone, including us and everyone we talked to, they kind of fell into this thing that they started becoming successful at, and that's when they learned to love it. Like the idea that you found it from Googling, how can I make the most money?
Yeah.
Like that's amazing. But you found your passion because you were doing something. You took action.
Was your love of real estate secondary to your passion and your love for maybe building the business or the processes? What part of that do you genuinely enjoy?
So it was funny, right? I'm in my 20s. I'm doing construction, and I'm going out all the time, right? I remember I used to work 4 10-hour days in construction. So I had Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday to hang out. And what did you do? You went out. You went bar hopping. You went to the clubs, and I remember my friends being so upset with me because we'd run into people that we haven't seen in a few years from high school. And instead of walking right past them like all of them would, I'd feel more awkward to not stop and get into a conversation, right? And they used to get so mad. They'd always yell at me like, what are you running for mayor? Come on, let's go. We're going to the next spot. And I was like, guys, for you, it's awkward getting in this conversation.
Right.
For me, it's way more awkward not getting in that conversation, making eye contact and
walking
continuing
by.
to walk,
Yeah,
right?
I can agree with that.
Honestly, it was my upbringing, but both my parents are Sicilian immigrants. And, we didn't have much, but they have such strong relationships. And I watch the way that they treat people. All the books that I've read on servant leadership, none of them come close to the lessons that I learned from my parents around leadership. And none of them ever owned their own business. Right. But the way that they led me and my 2 brothers, and the way that, they led their coworkers. My father just retired after working 50 years at Wegmans warehouse in Rochester on Brooks Avenue.
Wow.
Right? My mom she's trying to retire, but the owner, she's a GM of a car dealership. And every time she tries to retire, the owner just says, work 1 less day. We'll keep your salary the same. Okay, work 1 less day. I'm quitting. Okay, work 2 days a week, right? So I got the work ethic from them. And my parents they were always working, right?
But it sounds like they're also treating the people around them.
The relationships were the most important
The
part.
relationships.
Right? Yeah.
And you talk about like what motivates. I was self-motivated, but I didn't know what I was really capable of until I started hiring people, right? Because it's human nature to let ourselves down before a complete stranger. And, you know, when you're working for yourself and you wake up and you don't feel like going through that day, you can pack it in. When someone else and their families, depending on how you show up, you show up in a completely different way. And it's still to this day, I found a lot of success and I've been blessed. With that being said, I'm only good at a couple of things.
What, in your ascent to doing everything you've done, what was the biggest, was it 2022, the biggest like setback? Was there
2022 was the first time since getting licensed that my business didn't grow. I went on a run of doubling my business like 4 years straight, right? Going from my first year of like $6 million to 12 to 24, and then not only to flatline, but to drop. That was problematic. And the unfortunate, so when I say I dropped, I didn't drop in volume because the average sales prices went up. I dropped in units. And I don't care what your volume is. If you don't have unit envy in our industry, you're done. You had nothing to do with the average sales price going up.
Right.
So again, the uneducated real estate agents, all they know is they brought more money home and they're not paying attention to, well, hey, listen, I made 10% more this year than last year, and I'll look at their business, I go, yeah, your units are down 25%. You had no DNA on the market doing what it did. You only had DNA on the drop in your business. Wow. A lot of accidental success in our industry. There really is.
Who has better food, Buffalo or Rochester?
So, I mean, in all fairness,
By the way, this is Buffalo based.
yeah, no. Yeah, I was about
Just
to say.
kidding, just kidding.
In all fairness, at the end of the day, I'm usually driving back to Rochester, and I haven't been out enough in Buffalo to say,
Well, we have to change that.
yeah,
I know.
100%.
I gotta feed him.
Yeah. So Rochester, again, huge, ton of Italians, right? Ton of great Italian restaurants, but like not just like spaghetti and meatballs, like the best cuts of meat at these restaurants, right? So the best restaurant in Rochester, and it just so happens to be my cousin's, it's called Ristorante Lucano's. And that's where we'll go when you come to Rochester. You'll be blown away, right? Sicilian cuisine.
I want in on that field trip, please.
It's incredible. But no, I mean, listen, Buffalo there's so much more going on.
Yeah.
It's going to take light years for Rochester to ever catch up to Buffalo. You guys have developments. You don't see cranes in Rochester.
Well, that's only recent.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
I mean, that's
In
like
our
last 5 years.
Yeah.
maybe,
between,
right?
I would say between 2015 and 2020.
Yep.
Anyone who came to Buffalo before 2015 and then saw downtown after, they don't.
I will never forget this. A friend of mine commented on a Facebook post. This woman was like, or no, he was like, I've never seen so many cranes in like, oh, there's 3 cranes in downtown Buffalo. She fucking thought they were talking about birds. Like,
Oh
she
my
was
God.
just talking about. I thought it was the funniest post I've ever seen in my life. Because we never saw them before,
No,
right?
seriously,
there was no
there was
development downtown and no need for that.
Yeah.
Downtown is unrecognizable now
no doubt.
from like 10 years ago. Last question, we'll let you go. If you're on death row and you got one last meal, it could be from any era, what's that meal going to be?
Pizza.
Really?
It's pizza.
Not what about something your father made or something?
My father makes pizzas. My father makes fresh bread. My father makes homemade wine, right? I mean, my parents, when I say they're immigrants, like the traditions didn't fall off.
The bread that his father
It's the
makes.
best on the planet.
Homemade bread?
Oh,
Dude, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Wow.
yeah.
So-
Do I look like I practice a low carb diet?
So your parents' pizza?
No. I will say that. So you're asking like specific
Last meal,
pizza.
last thing you could ever eat.
Guida's Pizza in Rochester.
Whoa.
Yep.
What kind of pizza? Is it like
So,
thin?
across the
'Cause
board, so they'll do-
Buffalo's got some different type of pizza
They'll do-
that
so
if you're not
Guida's-
from here, you don't like it.
Guida's is great because they'll do a New York thin style, but if you're looking for like a football pie, it's Sunday, and you really want to eat their thick slice,
Dude, I
thick
want
pies
girth.
as well.
I want the girth.
It's
to my
awesome.
Pizza, man.
We gotta take a field trip.
Yeah.
I'm hungry now.
Yep. But no, listen, Rochester and Buffalo, we're blessed with great restaurants,
Yeah.
right? Because let's face it, there's not too much. It's not like we're Miami where there's just so much stuff we can do. We're cold for 8 months out of the year, so eating is really important. We're stuck with indoor activities.
Well, listen, greatly appreciate you having you on. Thanks for
Appreciate
being
you
here,
guys.
taking out your time. Why don't you plug yourself, whatever, any way to get in touch with you, social media?
You don't need to get in touch with me. We have a lot of real estate agents in Rochester and Buffalo with Keller Williams Realty. And yeah, that's it. That's my plug.
Okay.
Thanks. I love you.
Wow, I'm feeling a little left out on this one. Kevin.
We're on our
love you.
first date. You're not getting a ring.
I'm just jealous. I've never seen Joe. Well, I have seen Joe this friendly with other people. But thanks for joining us on our latest episode of this podcast. Let's Know Buffalo.